Africa's top oil producer cuts its budget for a second time this year. It expects to earn far less oil revenue in 2020. Nigeria's economy is projected to contract by 3.4% this year as dwindling oil revenues and the new coronavirus forced it to cut budget plans for a second time. The West African nation was assuming a lower benchmark of $20 per barrel. Nigeria, which emerged from recession in 2017, was already contending with low growth of about 2% before oil prices plummeted. Africa's top oil exporters relies on crude oil sales for about 90% of foreign exchange earnings and more than half of government revenue. Budget revisions need to be approved by legislators before signed into law by the president. Nigeria's economy is being battered by low oil prices following the earlier dispute between Russia and Saudi Arabia. Nigeria plans to cut oil production to 1.7 million barrels per day from 2.1 million barrels per day, initially proposed in the budget under an agreement brokered by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries in March. The managing partner, Zenera Consulting, Mecca Ololola, joins me now via Skype from Lekki here in Lagos. Thank you very much, Mecca, for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let's start with $20 per barrel. That's where our benchmark is pegged at this time. How realistic is that?
I think that's far more realistic than the $30 per barrel that we had earlier, pegged it at, and even way more realistic than the $57 per barrel that we had, coming into the year. The truth is that the market is very depressed. We're seeing a lot of glut in the market as we speak now. Nigeria has about 84 million, barrels of oil on the high sea that nobody, wants to buy yet. So even though it's rallying, we've seen, 2 levels of increment in the last 1 week, but the truth is that there's still a lot of glut in the market, and it's still way, below the average, cost of production that we have in Nigeria. So $20 is more realistic. If something goes up beyond that, it becomes an upside and an arbitrage for Nigeria. And if not, then we stay at those levels and manage the austerity that comes with it.
So are you going to agree to that fact that the gradual reopening of the economy, gradually, it's even a global issue? Now, would you say that is responsible for this little bit of improvement we see in the figures?
Yeah. Clearly, what you have, so oil prices are largely driven by speculation. So you have futures, contracts that are placed on a forward-looking basis. So when there is receptivity in the market, when there's volatility, when there's tension, in oil-producing countries, you see that, it starts to affect the prices negatively. And conversely, when you start to see, production go up, as you suspect will come with a partial lifting of restrictions or total lifting of restrictions later in the year, what, speculators will do will begin to place, a positive position on oil prices, and that's what we are saying. So it's not actually, the factors of production that are affecting the oil prices right now. So not strong fundamentals, but more largely from speculation. So China is waking up. You're seeing a lot of activities going on there. You're seeing a lot of, the West, the countries in the West coming up gradually on stream. And so because this particular depression was caused by the lack of productivity, from big buyers, you're going to see it lifting up gradually. But it's a cautious optimism that I would like us to adopt as a nation. Because I think that if you see even all the health experts and the forecast that they've given regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, the worst is not really over. So let's not jubilate too early.
Let's not jubilate too early. Let's talk about oil-dependent economies now, like Nigeria, Angola. We see what's been happening, talking about reviewing budgets and all of that. Now, depending so much on oil and gas, on the oil sector, something that's policymakers are worried about, and they talk about diversification. Are you one of those that believe that we need oil to diversify our economy?
Well, what I believe is not really pertinent right now, but what is realistic. Right now, we found ourselves in this boat where oil is responsible for 90% of government revenues and about 10% of the GDP. So what you're going to have is that we have no option but to diversify the economy. And the only anchorage that we have right now is oil and gas, okay? So there's going to be serious reduction going forward. The federal government has already taken a position in terms of what is going to flow into the Federation account in 2020 from 8.6 trillion. We're now expecting about 3.3 trillion. The president or the leader of the government forum the other day said, states should not expect any, sharing or any allocation, from June, or in the month of June, because there will be nothing to share, So federal government has cut the budget by 320 billion. There's a lot of adjustments going on. So we have no option than to diversify. In fact, I do argue that it may be net beneficial to government, to Nigeria and posterity for oil prices to stay depressed for a while, so that we have no option but to stimulate the economy using various other options. And when those options then become, high contributors to the revenues of the government, they will then come to be sustainable over time. So maybe it's not exactly a very bad thing for oil prices to go down.
We still see this issue also in the oil markets, OPEC plus. We saw what happened between Saudi Arabia and Russia. We saw what played out eventually. Now, what's your take regards to moves by the cartel and the oil markets vis-a-vis? What are your projections moving on in the year 2020? Even if the outlook it's not looking very good, we know clearly.
Okay, so I think personally that we've experienced perhaps the worst that is going to come. For the first time in history, we saw oil prices going into the negative zone, which actually meant that the oil producers, especially in Louisiana and somewhere in Canada, were prepared to pay you to take their crude oil because there was a pressure for storage and. Storage was running out, and anyone who was able to take it was going to be paid, literally. But you see, the agreement between Russia and Saudi Arabia, or effectively OPEC, is that we will cut 10 million barrels a day from production, right? That is significant. That's a lot of production cut. That's a significant production cut. And when that happens, you're definitely going to see some rallying around oil prices. I don't think that is going to be significant enough for what we need to do in terms of being able to ramp up the benchmark for Nigeria. I don't think so. I don't think we'll see that this year. I think sometime next year it begin to rally comfortably back again to the 40s and the 50s. And in 28 or 22, you will see a lot of stability back as trade pick up, as commerce commence, as production, productivity goes up, in oil buying countries. So right now, it's one of gradual ramping up. That's what I think it is, and I think prudent nations, should adjust accordingly.
Let's look at adding value to crude oil, which is something that many have said Nigeria has refused to do. We have crude oil here, we move it out and bring back refined product, and we keep paying more for this. We know what's happening with Dangote Refinery, and I'm sure this lockdown and all of that might actually even affect dates where they'll commence production. Now, how well do you see, or would you say Nigeria's added value to crude? It's something that we can get a lot of benefits from. And also let's touch on gas, which is another underexplored resource that we have in Nigeria.
So if you look at the value chain end to end, you will see that there's a huge gap missing in terms of local consumption or local production of refined products. So it's always not good move. It's not good for the macroeconomy for you to produce crude oil and in turn bring in refined products. All right. So you're leaving a lot of money on the table. So right now, refineries all over the world are having a field day because oil prices are very low, which is a very huge component in their production chain. So we don't have effective refineries, unfortunately, in Nigeria. So the problem is that we are not able to close the value chain end to end and transfer that benefit to Nigeria or Nigerians. So we still end up importing so much. We still end up flaring gas. We still end up, not utilizing gas effectively enough to produce, or fire our industries, or even for local consumption in the homes. By now, Nigeria should be talking about piped, liquefied, petroleum gas for usage in the homes. That is not happening. Right now, Nigeria should be saying that we fire our turbines, our industries by up to 80%, using gas. That is not happening. We're still relying on heavy fuels like AGO, LPFO, and all of you, which many countries are beginning to do away with because they are not as green. All right. So you have gas. We are sitting on perhaps the highest number of reserves, in the world, and then for this to be happening to us is very unfortunate. And I think that government should live up to that.
Before we round up this interview, one thing that comes to me is the fact that we need to attract investment into the oil and gas sector and, of course, other sectors of the Nigerian economy, particularly at this time where we're battling with coronavirus pandemic. Our laws, we know of PIB and what's been happening with PGIB and all of this. What do you think should be done? What laws do we need so that we can attract more investment into our oil and gas sector? We know that this has been dwindling for some time now.
Okay, so this is the best time for investments in the oil and gas sector because you can get a lot done now, with oil prices at these levels. So having said that, it's and you can see that our exchange rate is a bit devalued right now. So you saw the movement on the stock exchange in the last 1 week, which probably led to somewhat, that with the loan and the aperture loot probably led to what you saw in the foreign reserves, looking a bit brighter. But right now, so you have a currency that is slightly devalued, making it very interesting to FDIs. And then all you need to do is to put in place the enabling, ease of doing business in the country. But far more importantly, in my own opinion, I've always said this over the last 18 months, is what the government needs to do for local production, right? No matter how you incentivize, FDIs, people to come in, there will always be that element of capital flight that happens in the oil and gas industry. And that's why there hasn't been significant, technology and competency know-how transferred to local guys. So focus on the local guys for a moment, right? They're responsible for, maybe 10 to 15% of production in Nigeria. So look at them now. Maybe this is time to do palliative. General regulatory forbearance is required now. As my friend Shea Bella said, you need to incentivize the sector, relax some financial covenants, reduce profit taking at this time, encourage them to restructure major loan agreements that they have with the banks. I know those ones have fiduciary obligations to their investors, but government can come into, sort of midwife the process carefully so that you can have some deferred payments on principals or interest, extension of tenures, moratorium, and all of that. So when you have a local production unit that is very vibrant, it will mean that, staff will be employed. It has a multiplier effect on the nation, and the profits would reside in the country, which you need to do things like building refineries. These guys have been in Nigeria, the IOCs, for over 60 years, 70 years. No single refinery has been built by any foreign multi. None, not a single. It's taking, Dangote and people like Petrolex to come and say, we have to put a stop to this shame and to build it, no matter how much profit they make. So why don't you build your mega IOCs that are indigenous so that they will invest in the sector, because this is their land and there's nowhere they're going to. That's the way I would look at it. Give a bailout to the industry, the oil and gas industry now, give them palliatives, let them weather the storm. Because first you must, stymie corporate mortality, because it's he that is alive that can recover, right? So make sure that they weather through the storm and they are alive when the recovery takes place in 2022.
Indeed, Mecca Olowola. Thank you very much. He's a managing partner with Zenera Consulting. It's really nice to see you. Thank you for talking to us.